I can't believe you would do this, I whispered, my voice calm but laced with a weight that made the room feel smaller. I stood in the hallway of our suburban home, sunlight spilling through the blinds, illuminating the dust motes that floated lazily in the air. The morning was quiet, deceptively ordinary, yet the text I had just seen on Mark's phone shattered the illusion. Lisa, my own sister, had been meeting him in secret, arranging lunch dates, and sending messages that were never meant for me. I placed the phone gently on the counter, taking a deep breath, feeling the warmth of my coffee cup anchor me in the moment. I did not scream. I did not storm off. Instead, I let the weight of the betrayal settle into my chest, heavy but manageable. Each memory of our family gatherings, the Thanksgiving dinners I had prepared, the care I had shown in organizing birthdays and celebrations, flashed before me. They were punctuated by small inconsistencies I had overlooked, the cancelled visits, the unexplained absences, the tiny changes in Mark's behavior. All of it was visible now, clear as the morning light that filtered into the kitchen. I walked slowly to the living room, my movements measured, each step echoing softly against the hardwood floor. Mark was seated in his favorite chair, reading the newspaper, unaware of the storm I carried silently within me. Lisa's voice floated faintly from my mind, her laughter from the last family gathering, warm yet tainted by the knowledge I now held. I allowed a faint smile to cross my face, the kind that does not betray anger but conceals a careful calculation. There would be no immediate confrontation, no rash words. Instead, I would observe, note, and plan with precision. Every detail mattered, the times she called, the subtle shifts in Mark's routine, the moments when their interaction seemed too knowing, too rehearsed. I poured a second cup of coffee, the aroma grounding me as I settled into the armchair across from Mark. My mind traced the web of actions, the series of choices that had led to this quiet betrayal, and I felt a strange clarity, a sense of control that had been absent for far too long. Outside, the wind stirred the branches of the maple tree, leaves brushing against the window with a soft rustle, reminding me that the world moved on, oblivious to the fractures within my own home. I opened the blinds wider, letting more light flood in, as if to illuminate not just the room but the layers of deception I had uncovered. The morning stretched before me, calm and uneventful to anyone else, but charged with possibility and the knowledge that the truth I held would eventually shift the balance in ways neither Lisa nor Mark could anticipate. I set my cup down carefully, savoring the warmth and the silence, letting the tension coalesce into resolve. Today, nothing would be said. Today, the world outside would remain unaware. And yet, every glance, every step, every measured breath I took was a silent declaration. I knew, and I was ready. The morning passed quietly, the house filled with the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional chirp of birds outside. I moved from room to room, straightening cushions, adjusting picture frames, but my mind was elsewhere, tracing each small moment over the past months that had seemed ordinary at the time. Every cancelled dinner, every unexplained phone call, every subtle shift in Mark's routine now appeared connected, like threads in a larger pattern I had only just begun to see. I went to the kitchen and poured another cup of coffee, listening to the soft clink of the spoon against the mug, savoring the warmth and the brief comfort it brought. From the window, I could see the neighbors walking their dogs, children riding bikes down the street, life continuing unaware of the quiet storm within these walls. I sat at the dining table and opened a notebook, jotting down small observations, times, dates, moments that had once seemed trivial. The more I wrote, the more clarity emerged. I noticed patterns, the moments Lisa appeared in Mark's texts, the timing of her calls, the subtle changes in his demeanor whenever she was mentioned. I made no assumptions aloud, no confrontations, simply recorded. Each observation was a puzzle piece, each remembered conversation a key to understanding the extent of the deception. I reflected on my own reactions, the way I had dismissed certain interactions as coincidence, as misunderstandings, and now realized they were deliberate, calculated. The quiet of the house allowed me to focus, to see without distraction, and I felt a quiet resolve building. I walked to the living room and looked at the photo of our family vacation last summer, the smiles frozen in time, unknowing of the undercurrents beneath. I ran my fingers over the frame, thinking about the trust that had been broken, the relationships that had been manipulated. Yet, even as the realization of betrayal settled over me, I maintained a sense of calm. There was power in observation, in patience, in holding knowledge that others assumed I lacked. I moved to the office, opened the desk drawer, and reviewed old messages, receipts, notes, anything that could shed light on the full story. My attention to detail became a shield, each note a tool, each observation a step toward reclaiming control. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn, a gentle reminder that time moved forward, that I, too, could act deliberately and with precision. I brewed another pot of tea, the aroma filling the room, grounding me, centering me, reminding me that this house, this life I had built, was mine to navigate. I sat quietly, listening, watching, recording, each breath measured, each movement intentional, knowing that understanding the full picture was the first step before any confrontation or resolution could take place. I did not need to rush. I did not need to demand answers yet. The knowledge I held was enough to tip the scales when the moment came, and in this calm, I prepared myself for what was to come. The late afternoon light stretched across the living room, casting long patterns on the carpet as I traced the movements of Lisa and Mark in my memory, each interaction now heavy with significance. I remembered the way Lisa lingered too long when she visited, the carefully phrased questions that seemed innocent at first, the faint tension in Mark's voice whenever her name came up. I opened the laptop and reviewed the photographs from the last few months, ordinary family moments captured in smiles and shared meals, but now the subtle positioning, the gestures, the timing of their eyes meeting revealed an undercurrent I had overlooked. I took notes quietly, writing down every time their paths intersected in ways that made no sense until now, every cancelled plan that had seemed like coincidence, and every delayed reply to a message. The more I analyzed, the clearer the pattern became, like a map slowly forming from scattered fragments. I brewed another cup of tea, the steam curling into the air, and felt a steadying calm as I pored over the evidence. I noticed that Mark had begun to check his phone more frequently, glanced at messages quickly, and sometimes hesitated when Lisa's name appeared, a subtle change that had gone unnoticed for months. I replayed conversations in my mind, recalling the way Lisa had casually dropped by, the small gifts she had brought, the way Mark's tone had softened when talking about her. Each detail was a piece of the puzzle, every seemingly minor incident adding weight to the growing understanding that betrayal had quietly unfolded around me. I sat back in the armchair, the sun lowering outside, shadows stretching across the room, and felt a quiet determination settle in my chest. There would be no impulsive confrontation, no emotional outburst. Instead, I would continue to observe, to compile, to ensure that when the time came, I could reveal the full scope of what had been done with clarity and precision. The house remained still except for the ticking clock, my pen scratching notes, the distant hum of traffic outside. I reviewed the timeline again, aligning texts, visits, and interactions with uncanny accuracy, realizing that the evidence could not be dismissed. I let the quiet settle around me, a calm before the inevitable moment when the truth would be undeniable, knowing that the careful preparation now would allow for a confrontation that was controlled, deliberate, and entirely in my power. I refilled my tea and stretched slightly, the weight of knowledge tempered by patience, understanding that this measured approach was far more powerful than any immediate reaction. The sky outside shifted to hues of orange and pink, a reminder that time continued to move forward, but I, too, was moving with purpose, ready to navigate the complexities of family, loyalty, and deception with a steady hand and a clear mind, knowing that the coming revelation would be mine to deliver at exactly the right moment. The evening light softened the edges of the living room, shadows stretching across the floor as I reviewed the careful notes I had compiled over the past days. Each entry reminded me of the patterns I had observed, the subtle behaviors that now formed an undeniable narrative. I glanced at the clock, noting how the hands moved steadily forward while the house remained quiet, a contrast to the turbulence I felt internally. I brewed another pot of tea, the aroma grounding me as I contemplated the next steps, the precision of my plan forming clearly in my mind. I walked slowly to the bookshelf, scanning the titles and photographs that adorned it, reminders of a life carefully built and nurtured, a life now threatened by deception. I reflected on the subtle signs I had once dismissed, the cancelled plans, the offhand comments, the moments of hesitation in Mark's speech when Lisa's name was mentioned. Each incident, now pieced together, painted a portrait of quiet betrayal, deliberate yet hidden. I carefully organized the evidence I had collected, aligning messages, schedules, and small observations into a coherent timeline. The more I examined, the more confident I became in the accuracy of my conclusions. I took a seat by the window, the fading sunlight reflecting softly on the glass, and let the calm settle over me, a deliberate counterpoint to the unrest in my thoughts. I thought about the patience required to navigate this situation, the careful observation, the quiet accumulation of knowledge that would allow me to respond with clarity and authority when the time was right. Each note, each recorded detail became a tool, a way to ensure that the eventual confrontation would be controlled, deliberate, and in my favor. The house remained still, the familiar creak of the floorboards and the distant hum of traffic outside providing a subtle rhythm to my contemplation. I sipped my tea slowly, feeling the warmth spread through me, a small comfort as I prepared for the eventual revelation. Outside, the sky deepened into twilight, a gentle reminder that time moved forward, but within the walls of my home, I held the knowledge and the strategy that would allow me to reclaim control. I reviewed the subtle cues one last time, the moments that had once seemed insignificant, now critical in understanding the full scope of the situation. I let a quiet determination settle over me, knowing that when the moment came, I would reveal the truth with precision, leaving no room for doubt, and ensuring that the balance of power would be restored without haste or hesitation. Each measured breath, each deliberate movement reinforced my resolve, reminding me that patience and preparation were the strongest forms of action, and that the careful accumulation of insight would guide me toward the outcome I intended. As the night settled over the house, the interior lights cast a warm glow across the living room, illuminating the photographs that lined the shelves, reminders of birthdays, vacations, and quiet family moments. I sat at the desk, reviewing the detailed timeline I had constructed, each message, each visit, each casual comment catalogued and aligned with precision. The evidence was undeniable, yet I did not rush. I allowed myself to breathe deeply, appreciating the stillness around me, understanding that careful patience would amplify the impact of the truth when it was revealed. I reflected on the subtle changes in Mark's demeanor over the past months, the way he hesitated slightly when speaking of Lisa, the small, almost imperceptible shifts in his routine, and the glances that had once seemed harmless. Each observation reinforced the careful puzzle I was assembling. I organized documents, printed messages, and lined up photographs, each item a silent testament to the betrayal that had quietly unfolded. The kitchen timer ticked softly in the background, a mundane sound that grounded me amidst the complexity of emotions. I poured another cup of tea, letting the steam rise, a moment of calm and reflection, and I revisited the interactions I had observed in person, the subtle ways Lisa engaged with Mark, the polite smiles, the casual touches, all now seen under the lens of clarity. I contemplated how I would approach the eventual conversation, not with anger, but with a measured calm, allowing the facts to speak for themselves. I imagined the conversation, the unveiling of the timeline, the presentation of the details, each step deliberate, each word chosen with precision. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves, the familiar sounds of the neighborhood continuing as if nothing had shifted, while inside, I felt a quiet empowerment, a control that had been lacking when confusion and doubt had clouded my perception. I set down the cup and ran my fingers along the spine of the notebook, the pages filled with meticulous notes, a silent preparation for the moment when knowledge would be revealed. Each line, each entry, strengthened my resolve and sharpened my awareness of timing, ensuring that the truth would not just be told but understood in its full impact. I moved through the house methodically, reviewing spaces, ensuring that everything was in place, not for confrontation, but for clarity, a presentation of truth that could not be disputed. The room was quiet, the air heavy with anticipation, yet calm, a perfect reflection of the deliberate patience I had cultivated. I glanced at the clock, noting the steady progression of time, each tick a reminder that the right moment was approaching, and that when it arrived, the culmination of careful observation, measured reflection, and deliberate action would create an outcome that was entirely within my control. In this quiet confidence, I prepared mentally, understanding that power lay not in force, but in the careful accumulation of knowledge and the poised readiness to reveal it when the time was exactly right. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the blinds, casting delicate lines across the hardwood floor as I settled into my chair with a fresh cup of tea. The house was quiet, still carrying the faint echoes of the previous night's contemplation. I opened my notebook and reviewed the compiled observations, each note a step closer to understanding the full extent of the situation. The subtle interactions I had recorded, the small gestures, the carefully worded messages, all aligned to form a clear narrative. I noticed the shifts in Mark's tone, the hesitations, the furtive glances at his phone, the way Lisa's presence had influenced his daily routines. Each detail confirmed the pattern, the quiet manipulation that had unfolded beneath the surface. I moved slowly to the window, observing the street below, children playing, neighbors walking their dogs, unaware of the tension contained within my home. I sipped my tea, letting the warmth ground me, centering my thoughts as I considered the next steps. The evidence was no longer scattered, it was organized, tangible, undeniable. I thought carefully about timing, about how to reveal the truth in a manner that would leave no ambiguity, no room for denial. Every preparation I had made, every observation recorded, every interaction noted, would converge to a moment of clarity that could not be ignored. I walked back to the living room, the photographs of family memories lining the walls, their smiles and laughter now reframed by the awareness of betrayal. I arranged a small stack of documents on the coffee table, glancing at the careful order I had established, each piece of evidence ready to be presented with precision. I felt a quiet sense of control, a calm power that came from patience and preparation. The house remained serene, the stillness a contrast to the inner awareness I carried. I reviewed my plan mentally, step by step, ensuring that every movement, every word, would be deliberate and effective. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves of the maple tree, a soft rustle that reminded me that time moved forward, yet within these walls, I had established my own measure of order and readiness. I pored over each observation once more, reinforcing the connections, tracing the subtle cues, preparing for the moment when the accumulated knowledge would be revealed. I moved through the rooms with intention, checking details, confirming that everything was as it should be, not for confrontation yet, but for clarity and impact. I took a final sip of tea, feeling the quiet warmth spread through me, steadying my resolve. In this calm, deliberate state, I understood that the power lay not in rushing, but in measured observation, patient preparation, and the strategic unveiling of truth at the exact right moment. The day stretched ahead, full of potential, and I was ready to navigate it with focus, intention, and quiet authority, knowing that when the moment arrived, the culmination of careful planning would ensure that the balance of understanding and control rested firmly in my hands. The afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long, golden streaks across the living room carpet as I sat quietly on the armchair, tea in hand, reviewing the notes and photographs that I had meticulously organized over the past days. Every detail aligned perfectly, each observation confirming the narrative I had pieced together through careful attention and patient scrutiny. I reflected on the patterns of subtle behaviors that Mark and Lisa had exhibited, the almost imperceptible shifts in routine, the exchanges of words and glances that had seemed innocuous at the time but now revealed their hidden meaning. I revisited the printed messages, the handwritten notes, the timelines, each acting as a silent record of the choices and actions that had led to this quiet betrayal. I moved slowly to the window and looked out onto the street, watching the neighborhood continue its afternoon rhythm, oblivious to the careful planning and observation occurring inside these walls. The calm of the outside world contrasted sharply with the awareness I carried, a sense of control and preparation that had been absent in previous moments of uncertainty. I poured another cup of tea, inhaling the aroma and letting it anchor me as I mentally rehearsed the steps I would take to present the evidence I had compiled. Every detail mattered, the precise alignment of dates, the confirmation of patterns, the validation of what had seemed like fleeting moments. I imagined how Mark would react when confronted with the timeline, how Lisa would respond when faced with undeniable proof, and I measured each possible outcome with deliberate care. The house was filled with soft light and quiet shadows, the familiar creak of the floorboards under my feet marking each step I took as I moved between the living room and the office, checking notes, arranging photographs, and reviewing the order of events. I allowed the patience I had cultivated to guide me, knowing that any misstep could undermine the clarity and authority I intended to maintain. I reflected on the weeks of subtle observations, the nights spent quietly piecing together patterns, the moments of restraint when I could have reacted impulsively but chose instead to watch, record, and understand. With each passing hour, the sense of calm determination solidified within me, an awareness that the careful accumulation of knowledge and the deliberate organization of evidence would create an impact far greater than any immediate confrontation. I settled back into the chair, the sunlight now softened into a gentle glow, and reviewed the compiled information one final time, each piece a testament to the meticulous patience and attention to detail that would allow the eventual revelation to be delivered with precision, clarity, and unwavering control, ensuring that when the truth came to light, it would be understood fully and leave no room for doubt or denial. The evening had settled into a quiet calm, the last hints of daylight slipping through the blinds and casting soft, elongated shadows across the living room floor. I sat at the desk once more, the carefully organized stack of photographs, printed messages, and handwritten notes in front of me, each item meticulously aligned to construct a full narrative of events that had been hidden in plain sight. I reviewed each detail, every observation I had recorded over the past days, reinforcing the connections, confirming the patterns, and tracing the subtle interactions that Mark and Lisa had displayed without raising suspicion. The weight of knowledge filled me with a steady resolve rather than panic, a calm confidence born from patience and careful attention. I moved to the window, watching the street below, where children played and neighbors went about their routines, unaware of the careful orchestration that was about to unfold within the walls of my home. I sipped my tea slowly, the warmth anchoring me as I mentally rehearsed how the information would be revealed, each step deliberate, each word chosen with precision, knowing that the clarity of the truth would speak louder than any raised voice or emotional outburst. I reflected on all of the subtle cues, the tiny deviations in behavior, the hesitations and glances, and I felt a deep sense of control settle over me, the understanding that the timing and manner of disclosure would determine the effectiveness of the revelation. I walked slowly through the living room, arranging photographs, aligning notes, and ensuring that every piece of evidence was accessible and presented in a logical sequence, ready to support the narrative I had carefully constructed. The house remained serene, filled only with the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint rustle of leaves outside the window, a quiet stage for the confrontation that would ultimately expose the full scope of the hidden actions. I took another sip of tea and let the quiet wrap around me, feeling the weight of the day and the anticipation of the moment when the meticulous observations, patient analysis, and deliberate preparations would converge. The calm of the evening allowed me to reflect on how far I had come, from noticing subtle inconsistencies to compiling an undeniable account, and it reinforced the sense that preparation and composure were the most powerful tools I had. Each breath I took, each deliberate movement through the house, reinforced the notion that the truth would be revealed in a controlled, deliberate manner, ensuring that every detail I had carefully recorded would be recognized, understood, and appreciated. I sat back in the chair, looking at the carefully organized materials before me, the sunlight fading completely, leaving a quiet, contemplative twilight that matched the inner clarity I had cultivated, knowing that when the time came, the careful observation and preparation would allow the story to be revealed with full impact and unambiguous understanding. The house was enveloped in the quiet of late evening, the soft glow of lamps casting gentle circles of light on the walls and furniture, creating a stillness that contrasted with the careful deliberation running through my mind. I sat at the desk, the stack of photographs, notes, and printed messages meticulously organized before me, each item aligned to form an undeniable story of subtle deception and carefully hidden intentions. I reflected on the path that had brought me here, the weeks of observation, the patient compilation of evidence, the quiet moments when I had resisted reacting impulsively in order to maintain clarity and control. The culmination of these efforts had left me with a comprehensive understanding, a full picture of the interactions and decisions that had been made without my knowledge. I considered how to reveal this truth in a way that was precise, calm, and compelling, knowing that the careful alignment of facts would speak louder than any confrontation or argument. I reviewed the timeline once more, tracing the movements and communications between Mark and Lisa, each detail reinforcing the pattern I had discerned, confirming the conclusions that had become evident through careful observation. I allowed the quiet to settle around me, each breath deliberate, each moment reinforcing the sense of preparation and readiness. I imagined the eventual conversation, the presentation of the compiled evidence, and the clarity that would come with it, the way each observation would create understanding without the need for raised voices or dramatic displays. I moved slowly through the living room, adjusting photographs and notes to ensure that every piece of information was accessible and orderly, each item serving as a testament to the careful planning and patient accumulation of insight. Outside, the last hints of twilight faded, leaving a soft darkness broken only by the glow of streetlights and the occasional movement of leaves in the evening breeze. Inside, I felt the weight of knowledge balanced by a serene confidence, the awareness that the power of truth lay in its measured revelation. I sipped the last of my tea, letting the warmth spread and steady me as I reviewed once more the subtle cues, the small interactions, the evidence that connected seemingly minor moments into a coherent and undeniable account. I reflected on the control I now held, not through confrontation but through preparation, clarity, and the quiet assurance that when the moment came, every piece of knowledge would align to create an impact both precise and undeniable. The house remained still, the quiet punctuated only by soft ambient sounds, and I felt the readiness settle fully within me, knowing that the culmination of patient observation, deliberate planning, and careful assembly of evidence would allow the truth to emerge in its full clarity, leaving no room for doubt and ensuring that the resolution of hidden actions would be understood completely by those involved.